We now turn to Chapter 4, the heat bed assembly. Welcome to Barrett Works. All the steps in this chapter deal with getting the heat bed installed on the Z-rods and the power for the heat bed routed through and connected to the PSU. But you'll see right now I'm installing the power cables to the heat bed, and in a moment I'm going to take them back off because they don't sit flush. The shrink wrap, and in my case, even the crimp, the metal crimps themselves, conflict with the heat bed. They extend too far toward the circular openings in the terminals on the end of the wire. So first I trimmed the heat shrink with a knife and then very slightly ground the metal material back 1 millimeter or so. And you'll notice in the comments, particularly if you extend to the older comments in the Prusa instructions, that this was a common problem. People talked about it. Some people tried flipping the cables. Others did the trimming that I did. 50 Tech Corners video instructions show that you can install the wires with the shrink tubing conflicting with the bed. It just presses them up a bit, but it seems to work out. He's also working from an older version of the instructions that has the user install a socket head cap screw between the two terminals to attach the bracket. Turns out that cap screw is too tall, and Ifty Tech Corner at the end of his video switches that to a small black button head screw, and Prusa's instructions have also been updated at this point to have you use a button head screw. So if you're following Ifty Tech Corner's video, don't do what you see him do. Switch to a button head screw, which is what you'll see in the Prusa instructions and what he'll correct at the end of his video. The RGB lights and diffuser and cover actually go together quite well. It seems like as you're doing this, I get the sense there should be more of a structure, a box that they go into. But it's really a sandwich that you build with the LED lights shining up into the diffuser material and then reflecting off the back of this cover that you screw in place and that pins the entire structure together. The cables get zip tied to the carriage at this stage and permanently attached. Now the carriage has the expansion joints and the RGB attached, and next up are the right and left bed mounts, which primarily, assembling them primarily involves getting a whole set of nylon lock nuts inserted into recesses that are in the printed parts, and putting the bearings in place and making sure their orientation, they're turned just so. They talk about an X. You'll see that in the instruction before you tighten them down. Once that's assembled, attaching them to the carriage is extremely easy because you're just threading the screws into the nuts that have been inserted into the part already. So it's a metal-on-metal connection. After they're in place, it's time to mate it up with the heat bed itself, which is done initially loosely, and then with a careful pattern of tightening the screws that attach the heat bed to the carriage so that you maintain the flatness of the heat bed as well as possible. Now that the carriage with its RGB cables and the heat bed with the power cables to the heat bed are together, you can bundle these cables together out the bracket and then wrap them in a textile sleeve, which will get trapped in the bracket at the back of the heat bed. That textile sleeve will eventually then be run through the back of the printer, through the back panel, and attached at that end with a zip tie, so that at each end, this bundle of cables inside the textile sleeve won't be able to move relative to its attachment points, and in theory, should not fray. At this point, with the bed in place over the Z-rods, even though nothing is fully connected and moves yet, it begins to look like a 3D printer. Note that in Ifty Tech's instructions, he suggests attaching the rear spacer to the heat bed assembly loosely before you slide the heat bed assembly over the Z-rods. Then you take the screws out that attached it loosely temporarily, and as you put the trapezoidal nut on the rear Z-rod, it's easier to align its holes with the holes in the heat bed and then the spacer below it without fiddling. I did that and it worked well. The front trapezoidal nuts are easier. You just spin them down and put the screws in. Then you attach the power cable, which you see me doing now, and that's it for Chapter 4. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't yet, and join me for Chapter 5.